everyone, Shawn Clement here at the Richmond Hill Golf Learning Center, headquarters for Wisdom in Golf. And today we're talking about an article that Peter Kostis brought onto golf.com, and he is echoing the same, principles of backswing that BRANDEL CHAMBLEE just brought out as well in golf.com or Golf Magazine. And Brandel is coming out with his book in March, in the next couple of weeks, so we're all anticipating that. I can't wait to see it. So Peter Kostis is also saying that there is an overabundance of information out there, too much technology when it comes to teaching golf, and I totally agree with Peter on this one. So not only do I agree on the fact that he says, listen, for all these decades, we allowed the hips to turn, knee come in behind the ball, left heel off the ground, and about 30 years ago, when video analysis came out, there's your first bit of technology that overdid and overshot its mark. Everybody started to think, okay, look at all these body parts that are moving around right here. We need to reduce that margin for error. We need to nip and tuck that swing to death. That's not how we function as humans on this planet. You've seen this in a lot of my videos. Now, so that was our first, mishap with technology. When I'm using video analysis, it's simply to marry your perception to reality. So in my posture, so when we talk about posture, we talk about static posture and dynamic posture. Well, for those of you who tend to, okay, I've got a golf ball here sitting still, I'm going to be still with the ball. Yeah, this feels really good. So you notice how this represents someone waiting, motionless, for something, like coffee at Starbucks, for example. Sure. But let's say you wanted to heave a sandbag into the back of a pickup truck. You're not going to do it too well from here. There we go. So now I feel like I'm glutes, quads, activated. I'm able to heave that sandbag into the back of a truck. So when I see a student like this and I put them in this position here, or her, they feel like they're over here. Literally, they're going, oh my God, you're crazy. I can't put myself there. That's when I'll use video analysis or a mirror to show them what they look like, and then they go, oh my gosh, that looks really fantastic. That looks like somebody getting ready to swing assertively towards a target. So that's why I use video, and every so often, every 2-3 months, let's say with my winter students, I'll put them on video just to show them how good they look. Not to show them what their faults are, because the faults don't exist. So then, they say, oh, look, see, I went over the top again. So I show them the video. I say, yeah, you went over the top. What was your focus? Well, I don't know. I didn't have a focus. Well, so many of you are that way, right? You don't have a focus. You're going to default to the ball. You have to come over the top when you default to the ball. And then you say, oh my gosh, my swing's rotten and I'm doing something wrong. So get that out of your mind. You can't do anything wrong. All you got to do is give your system the right focus. Now, we also use launch monitors here. We got Flight Scope that we use on a regular basis. You'll see that in a lot of our videos on the premium channel. And I'll demonstrate a shot, then I show how the ball curves and flies with the Flight Scope unit. And that is simply to confirm what you feel. So you say, well, I don't know, did that curve or not? And then so I'll show them and I say, yeah, see, the ball's curving nicely. Okay, so when I feel that, I'm going to get that ball flight. And when I feel that, I'm going to get this ball flight. So now they know how to associate a feel to curvature, which normally we would do when we're outside in the summertime. And now we're using the technology to its proper use. Whereas you'll see a lot of people using TrackMan and Flight Scope to show, hey, if you came down 3 degrees less steep and your club face was 1 more degree closed, how is your brain supposed to figure that one out? It can't. It's impossible. So now you are trying to micromanage all these little finite positions. That's going to drive your system mad, especially knowing now through these beautiful research papers and research notes from these fantastic scientific bodies like Gabriel Wolf from University of Las Vegas, who tell us how we're learning stuff as human beings on this planet, how we learn motor skills. And they show us that the brain has to reformulate everything from scratch. So even though you came down like 2 degrees too flat or 2 degrees too steep, the very next swing you make is another one of a kind. So what are you micromanaging for? How about, instead of coming down a little shallower here, I think about hitting the ball higher out there. Because so many of my students say, well, isn't that ball flight a little too low, or isn't that a little too high? And I ask them, well, what height did you want to hit it on? And they go, I don't know. Well, there you have it. So I say, okay, see that keep out sign right there? You see the height on that? So I usually put, at a specific height. I say, okay, let's see you go under the keep out sign. Well, under the keep out sign, I got to play the ball further back in my stance. I'm going to feel a nice low release through the shot. So here we go. Yep, right under the U of keep out. So my attention was on keeping the ball under the keep out sign. So now if I say, okay, let's go above the wet paint sign. How about above the left side of the left edge of that wet paint sign, which is another 2 feet above the keep out sign. So now I feel like I'm going to play it a little more forward now. I'm playing a fade, and the ball from this position still feels like, okay, I can hit it that high. I can't. I'm going to have to reach back. That doesn't work. Well, that feels like the ball's way too far forward. Now you don't have access to the ground in front of the ball. But here, realistically, I have access to that height right there. So left edge of wet paint, left edge of wet paint, right there. That was that high above the left corner wet paint. So if we look at the difference in launch angle, well, the first one, the launch angle was probably around 8 degrees. Whereas the second one, the launch angle was closer to 22, 23 degrees. You have this ability right now. These are just tools to help you. So you'll notice that, like what Nick Fallow said, he says the difference between me being number 1 in the world and number 10 in the world is number 10, I was kind of using all my clubs for the same specific distance and the same height and all that stuff. And he says, now that I'm number 1 in the world, I realize that, hey, I can hit this the length I want and the height I want. So I can do so much more with each club. And that's how you get to win the British Open, because you can't win the British Open if you're a one-trick pony, okay? And it's the same thing with the US Open and the majors. So that's why these guys love to, be able to, work the ball from both sides and be able to work the height of their shots. So trajectory plays a big factor there in the angle of attack. You see? So instead of saying, well, the angle of attack was this much and the club face was this much and you would hit the ball much straighter if you had these together, well, how about telling your brain what you want to use out there? And you notice that when you perform your task and release out there, all these numbers are going to freaking start lining up beautifully, aren't they? That's how you use technology. You use it to help your central nervous system, the most sophisticated and incredible system in the universe that blows the socks off of any TrackMan or FlightScope unit. And now, you're putting it to good use, and you're making the proper observations, and the technology, that FlightScope technology that we have, is helping our students confirm that what they're feeling is actually fact. Okay? Enjoy that. Thanks, Peter Kostis, for bringing that to our attention, and we'll see you in our next video.